This may look like any ordinary mid-sized Mercedes-Benz SUV, except that this one is very, very different. It doesn't have a petrol engine, it doesn't have a diesel engine, it doesn't need any fuel at all. It's called the Mercedes-Benz EQC, and it's the first all-electric car from the world's first car maker. With that comes enormous expectations. Mercedes-Benz is known for innovation. It's known for creating some of the world's most stylish cars, some of the world's fastest cars, but it's not known for electric vehicles. It is a comparative minnow. On the other hand, it's going head-to-head with Tesla, one of the world's youngest car makers, a car maker known only for its electric cars, and a car maker that dominates that premium luxury space for now. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the EQC brings plenty of innovation. It's got 2 electric motors. There's nothing unusual there. A lot of EVs do that, except that they're very different in the way they operate. The front one does most of the driving. It does most of the everyday motoring and the power that you need just for cruising around town. When you call on more, when you want it to be a bit sportier, the rear one plays a bigger role. So they're tuned quite differently. Between them, they make 300 kilowatts of power, 760 newton meters of torque, and it's that torque that really hits hard. You push the accelerator and it does get going. The claim is 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.1 seconds. So this is a brisk SUV. One of the big issues with electric vehicles is how far you can go between charges. In this car, it's got an 80 kilowatt hour battery. Now, Merc says that's good for about 450 kilometers of driving. So that's pretty commensurate with what you'd get from a regular petrol powered vehicle. And it seems to be going just fine here. We're getting many hundreds of kilometers out of the charge. When you get home, if you've got a wall box charger, it's going to take something in the region of 12 hours from full empty to fully charged. But it can also take fast charging at one of the DC fast charging networks that's starting to become more common in Australia and is extremely common around here in Norway, where I'm testing this vehicle. But it's not just the outright range, it's how this car thinks about how it's going to use the electricity on board. It's got intelligent software that basically looks at a whole bunch of parameters to work out how far you'll go on a single charge and to work out if the route you're taking on the day you're taking is feasible. But the overarching thing is just how normal the EQC is. Now, underneath, it's loosely based on the Mercedes-Benz GLC, a sort of $60,000 plus mid-sizer. But there are significant changes. None of the external body panels are the same, so it's completely unique in terms of design, even if there are obvious similarities there. Inside, again, very much GLC, very much normal Merc, with the exceptions of a few materials, things like the dash material, for example, quite interesting and innovative in terms of the finishes, and even some of the trim items, some of the pieces of plastic and metal that just make it stand out a little bit more. Even the switches, the dials, the gauges are all very similar to what you find in a regular Merc, right down to the gear shift paddles. The only difference is this car doesn't have a transmission, it's a single speed. These paddles instead, they adjust the regenerative braking, how much the car automatically brakes when you lift off the throttle. So you put it in the most or the least aggressive mode and it'll actually just pretty much coast. You've got no braking at all. Put it in the most aggressive mode and it's quite noticeable in terms of how much braking you get. And every time it's doing that, it's reversing the flow of the electric motor. So you're turning that energy back into electricity that you can use next time you take off. Norway is a really interesting place for electric vehicles. Obviously in Australia, there's been a lot of political debate about how quickly we could take up these sorts of cars and whether by 2030 we could have half the market being electric vehicles. Well, here in Norway, they're already beyond that. They're at 57% EVs. So it can be done if you've got the right intentions and if you've got the right political will to make it happen. So that's the Mercedes EQC. It's certainly got some very innovative and interesting technology going on. It's an exciting machine. Of course, the big question is how much it's going to cost. That tends to be the hiccup, the blocker with electric vehicles. We'll know more about that around October 2019 when the car goes on sale in Australia. Until then, you can read more about it, catch our full review at practicalmotoring.com.au.